You know, there are these unwritten rules for getting ahead at work, right? We're all told to just hunker down and do our jobs. But what if I told you the real key to a bigger paycheck is hidden in the work nobody even asks you to do? Today, we are diving into the surprising and totally research-backed link between going that extra mile and what ends up in your bank account. I mean, it's the classic question, isn't it? You see a coworker totally swamped, or maybe there's some task that needs doing, but it's not technically your problem. Do you just stick to your job description, or do you jump in and help out? Does all that extra unpaid effort ever really come back to you? Well, the answer isn't just a hunch or some feel-good corporate slogan. It's a big, loud yes, and it's backed by hard data. The research is incredibly clear on this. All that extra effort you choose to put in is systematically linked to higher pay. So let's unpack what's really going on here. To really get why it pays off, first we need to get specific about what we're even talking about. Because in the academic world, they don't just call it going the extra mile. They have a much more official name for it: being a good organizational citizen. Yep, the official term is Organizational Citizenship Behavior, or OCB for short. And the most important word in that whole definition is discretionary. This is not about just working more hours or crushing your sales targets. It's all about the voluntary things you choose to do, the stuff that you won't find in your job description and that definitely won't show up on your formal performance review. So what does this actually look like day to day? Well, it's probably stuff you see all the time. It's stuff like, helping out a teammate who's drowning in work, even when you've got your own stuff to do. It's being that person who actually says good things about the company to people on the outside. It's raising your hand for that committee that nobody else wants to join, or being the one to say, hey, I think I have an idea to make this process a little less painful. All of those are perfect examples of OCB. Okay, so we've got the concept down, but hey, I promised you data, not just a nice theory. So let's actually look at the numbers that prove this whole thing works. So this first number, 0.26, it comes from what's called a meta-analysis, which is basically a study of a whole bunch of other studies. And it measures the strength of the positive link between OCB and your salary. Now, it's not a guarantee, of course, but what it shows is a really clear, consistent, and meaningful pattern. The bottom line is, people who do these things just tend to earn more money, period. Now, this next number, 0.205, is where it gets really interesting. This one isolates the direct effect. So after scientists used all their fancy models to filter out a bunch of other factors, they found that OCB all by itself has a direct, measurable, positive impact on salary. And that's crucial. This isn't just two things happening at the same time, one is actually causing the other. Okay, this is where my mind was kind of blown. We've established the what. We know being a good team player is linked to higher pay. But the real mystery is how, right? How on earth does volunteering for some random task or helping a colleague actually end up putting more money into your pocket? Well, the answer lies in a few really powerful, almost hidden psychological mechanisms that are always at play in the workplace. Let's break down the three main pathways that turn these good deeds into a better salary. So the financial reward you get for OCB is really driven by three core things. First, there's this powerful psychological gut instinct called managerial reciprocity. Second, there's the subtle art of impression management. And third, there's this amazing feedback loop called the indirect performance boost. Let's walk through each one. All right, first up, managerial reciprocity. At its heart, this is just basic human nature. When somebody does a favor for you, you feel this little itch to return it, right? Well, guess what? Managers are human too. And get this, the research shows this isn't just happening by accident. Managers consciously remember these extra mile things you do. So when it's time for salary reviews or deciding on bonuses, they intentionally reward those employees to, even the score. They are literally repaying the favor. The second pathway is something called impression management. Look, every single thing you do at work is contributing to your professional reputation. And acts of OCB, well, they're like giant flashing signals. They paint this picture of you as someone who is committed, who is helpful, who is invested in the team's success. In other words, a super valuable employee. And that positive impression isn't just a nice to have, it directly influences decisions about rewards. Your actions create a story in your manager's head. And when that story is, this person is a valuable, committed team player, the next logical thought is often, and they deserve to be rewarded for it. And finally, the third mechanism is this fantastic virtuous cycle. When you help your colleagues, you're not just being nice. You're building stronger relationships and a bank of goodwill. So later, when you're the one who's stuck or needs a hand, they're way more likely to jump in and help you out. All that support ultimately helps you do your own job better, which of course also gets rewarded. So we've looked at the immediate mechanics, but what happens when you zoom out and look at this over an entire career? This is where all of these little actions start to compound into a really significant long-term advantage. This really gets to the heart of the trade-off. In the short term, yeah, doing this stuff costs you time and energy, and you're not getting an immediate reward for it. But the long-term benefits are huge. We're talking about higher lifetime earnings and building what's called reputational capital. And that is a powerful asset that pays you back for years and years. And this leads to such a cool insight. We all kind of know that people with proactive personalities tend to get ahead. But what this research tells us is that it's not just the personality itself that's being rewarded. It's the behaviors that personality leads to. It is the action, not just the attitude, that leads to a bigger salary. Okay, before we wrap this up, there is one last fascinating piece to this puzzle. Because while being a good citizen at work is good for pretty much everyone, the research suggests the payoff might not be exactly the same for all of us. So, for instance, one study found that for young women who have a strong internal locus of control, which is just a fancy way of saying they truly believe that they are in control of their own success, the salary bump from these helpful behaviors was especially strong. It's just a fascinating little reminder that while the principle works for everyone, its impact can be supercharged by our own mindset. So, there you have it. The evidence is pretty clear. All those extra mile efforts, they are anything but wasted. They build reciprocity, they shape your reputation, and they actually boost your own performance. It's the unwritten rule for turning good citizenship into a very tangible pay raise. Which really just leaves one final thought. Now that you know the rules of the game, what's one small helpful thing you could choose to do at work tomorrow?